My name is Margaret Hayes, and what I'm about to share with you will shake you to your core. This NDE is not only deeply personal to me, but also profoundly transformative to you. This is a testimony of how I died and how during that time, Jesus Christ himself revealed to me shocking truths about the mark of the beast that I was commanded to share with the world. This is more than a near-death experience. It's a message for all of humanity, delivered by Jesus Christ himself. What I saw, what I learned, will challenge everything you thought you knew about the world we live in. But to understand its significance, I need you to understand how I got there. I was never the type of person to think too deeply about the afterlife. Don't get me wrong, I believed in God, attended church, and considered myself a Christian. But my faith, as I now realize, was shallow. It was a box I checked on Sundays, a set of habits I followed more out of tradition than conviction. My life in Phoenix, Arizona, was busy and full of responsibilities. As a single mother to two boys, Jason, 14, and Liam, 9, I juggled work as a property manager with parenting. My days started before sunrise and ended long after the boys were asleep. I managed tenant disputes, oversaw maintenance crews, and kept an eye on market trends. To outsiders, I seemed like someone who had it all together, but inside, I often felt like I was running on fumes. Faith was something I fit into the cracks of my life. I'd whisper a quick prayer before bed, read a few verses from the Bible app when I remembered, and attend church services when I wasn't too exhausted. Looking back, I realize I treated God like an afterthought, a safety net to catch me when life got too hard. September 11th, 2023, started like any other day. I woke up to the sound of my alarm blaring at 5:30 a.m. The sky outside was gray, and a light drizzle streaked the window pane. I brewed a cup of coffee, mentally reviewing my to-do list. I had a tenant meeting at 9 a.m. to discuss a rent dispute, a pile of paperwork waiting for me at the office, and a promise to myself that I'd finally call Liam's teacher about his math grades. As I sipped my coffee, Jason wandered into the kitchen, his hair sticking up in all directions. "Morning, Mom," he mumbled, reaching for a box of cereal. "Morning, sweetheart," I replied, ruffling his hair. "Don't forget your soccer cleats today." Liam joined us a few minutes later, still half asleep but clutching his favorite blanket. It was moments like these, quiet, unremarkable family moments, that I took for granted. I didn't know they'd become memories I'd hold on to with fierce gratitude. By 7:30 a.m., I was out the door, briefcase in hand, and my favorite worship playlist playing through the car speakers. The rain had picked up, but I didn't think much of it. Living in Arizona, rainstorms always felt more like a novelty than a threat. As I approached the intersection of Bell Road and 32nd Street, everything seemed normal. The light turned green, and I accelerated. That's when I saw it, a semi-truck barreling toward the intersection, unable to stop on the slick pavement. Time slowed down. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The impact was deafening, a cacophony of metal crunching, glass shattering, and my own scream echoing in my ears. The next thing I knew, I was floating. At first, I didn't understand what was happening. I looked down and saw the wreckage of my car, the crumpled metal twisted around the truck like a grotesque sculpture. My body was slumped against the steering wheel, blood trickling down my face, pooling on the shattered glass. Paramedics were already on the scene, shouting orders and moving frantically. Their faces were a mixture of focus and desperation. Someone was performing CPR on me, their hands pressing rhythmically against my chest. I felt no pain, no fear, just a strange sense of detachment. It was as if I were watching a movie, except the main character was me. I tried to call out, to tell them I was right there, floating just above them, but no sound came. My voice didn't exist anymore, at least not in the way it once had. As I hovered, a light began to appear in the distance. It wasn't like any light I'd ever seen before. It shimmered, alive and pulsating, radiating warmth and love. It seemed to grow brighter with every passing second, as though it was reaching out to me, calling me. The closer it came, the more I felt an overwhelming pull, as if every fiber of my being yearned to merge with its brilliance. Then I heard it, a symphony of voices, each one distinct yet perfectly harmonious. The music was beyond anything I could describe. It wasn't just sound, it was alive, a melody that resonated deep within my soul. It felt like the universe itself was singing, pouring out pure adoration. It was a language of worship that transcended words, a communication so profound it filled me with peace and awe. As I moved toward the light, I became aware of a presence, a figure standing in its center. It was Jesus. He wasn't like the images I'd seen in church or the illustrations in children's Bibles. There was a divine majesty about him, yet he exuded a humility that was deeply comforting. His robe shimmered with hues of gold and white, as though it had been woven from threads of pure light. Every movement of the fabric seemed to carry a gentle glow, and his face was both familiar and otherworldly. But his eyes, oh his eyes, held the entire universe. They sparkled with a love so profound that it seemed to pierce through every doubt, every fear, every shadow I had ever carried. In their depths, I saw galaxies swirling, stars being born, and an eternal kindness that words could never fully capture. "Margaret," he said, his voice resonating through my very being. It wasn't just a sound, it was a vibration, a living energy that filled me with love, peace, and a sense of belonging I'd never experienced before. "There are things you must see and truths you must tell." As he spoke, understanding flowed into me. It was as though every question I'd ever had about life, death, and God suddenly became clear, the answers unfolding like petals of a flower. "Come," he said, extending his hand toward me. When I took his hand, the world around us shifted. The light dissolved, replaced by what appeared to be a bustling city. It was alive with activity, the air filled with the hum of advanced technology. People hurried past us, their faces illuminated by the glow of handheld devices and holographic screens that floated effortlessly in the air. "This is the near future," Jesus explained. "Watch closely." At first glance, the world seemed like a utopia of innovation. Towering skyscrapers gleamed with panels that absorbed sunlight, and vehicles moved soundlessly, hovering inches above the ground. People no longer used cash or credit cards. Instead, they made transactions with a simple wave of their hands. Small, sleek implants beneath their skin allowed them to pay for groceries, unlock doors, and access medical records in an instant. It was astonishingly efficient, almost magical in its convenience. But as I looked closer, Jesus revealed what lay beneath the surface. The implants were more than just tools. They were trackers, recording every movement, every choice, every thought. People moved like they were free, but many were bound by invisible chains, systems of control that stripped them of true autonomy. "This is what happens," Jesus said, "when convenience replaces wisdom and humanity surrenders to power without discernment." At first, the glowing devices seemed harmless, innovations meant to improve life. People moved about with ease, scanning their hands to pay for goods, enter secure areas, or access personalized services. It appeared to be a world of progress, one that promised to simplify and streamline every aspect of daily life. But then, Jesus gestured, and my perspective shifted. Suddenly, I could see the spiritual undercurrents intertwined with this technology. A dark energy pulsed beneath the surface of the system. It wasn't just a network of convenience, it was a web of control, intricately designed to entrap the soul. The implants, I realized, weren't merely tools, they were shackles. Invisible chains wrapped around the hearts and minds of the people, binding them not physically but spiritually. With each transaction, a little piece of their free will eroded, replaced by a growing dependency on the system. They were no longer in control, they had surrendered their autonomy to an unseen force. "Do you see it, Margaret?" Jesus asked me. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. They don't realize what's happening to them. They've traded freedom for comfort, truth for convenience, he said. The enemy's greatest weapon is subtlety. He doesn't come with chains. He comes with offers of ease and promises of safety. As we walked through the city, I saw people smiling, laughing, living their lives with no awareness of the spiritual decay creeping into their souls. I wanted to scream to warn them, but Jesus placed a hand gently on my shoulder. They can't hear you, Margaret. Not yet. But you will have a voice when you return. You must tell them what you've seen. The scene shifted again, and I found myself standing on the edge of a vast chasm. Across the divide, I could see 3 distinct realms, each glowing with its unique light, or in some cases, lack of it. Jesus led me to the first realm, a place of radiant light and overwhelming peace. Souls here moved freely, their forms shimmering like living stars. They communicated not with words but with thoughts and emotions, sharing joy, love, and wisdom. These are the righteous souls, Jesus explained. They've lived lives of love, service, and faith. They're not perfect, but they've sought God earnestly and aligned their lives with His will. The second realm was different. It was a place of learning and growth. Souls here appeared less luminous, their forms more defined. Some were engaged in deep study, poring over ancient scrolls and texts that seemed to contain divine truths. Others were in groups, sharing their stories and supporting one another. These are the learning souls, Jesus said. They're on a journey of spiritual growth, seeking to understand what they didn't grasp during their earthly lives. It's not a punishment, but an opportunity for refinement. Then we came to the third realm. My heart clenched at the sight. This place was shrouded in a gray, oppressive mist. Souls wandered aimlessly, their forms dim and hunched. Some clutched their heads as if tormented by unseen forces, while others sat motionless, consumed by despair. These are the lost souls, Jesus said. They've rejected love and truth, clinging to pride, hatred, or fear. But even here, hope exists. My light can reach them if they choose to turn toward it. I watched as a single ray of light pierced the mist, landing on one of the souls. For a moment, the soul hesitated, then began moving toward the light. Slowly, its form brightened, and it was lifted out of the mist, drawn toward the realm of learning. Redemption is always possible, Jesus said, but it requires a choice, a turning of the heart. After witnessing the realms, Jesus turned to me. Margaret, there's something I must show you about your own life. Suddenly, scenes from my past began to unfold around us. I saw myself as a young girl, kneeling by my bed and praying with my mother. The innocence and purity of my faith back then brought a lump to my throat. The scenes shifted, showing moments from my adulthood. I saw myself rushing through life, consumed by work, distracted by trivial concerns, and neglecting the deeper connection with God. You've been given much, Margaret, Jesus said. Your love for your children, your resilience, your sense of responsibility, all these are gifts. But you've also lost sight of the greater purpose. I felt a deep conviction, not of condemnation but of clarity. I realized how often I'd allowed busyness to crowd out what truly mattered: faith, love, and eternal purpose. What must I do, Lord? I asked, my voice trembling. Return and tell them, he said. Share what you've seen. Live differently. Let your life be a testimony of my love and truth. After witnessing the realms, Jesus turned to me. Margaret, there's something I must show you about your own life. Suddenly, scenes from my past began to unfold around us. I saw myself as a young girl, kneeling by my bed and praying with my mother. The innocence and purity of my faith back then brought a lump to my throat. I could feel the warmth of those early years, the simplicity of my belief, and the closeness I felt to God. The scenes shifted, showing moments from my adulthood. I saw myself rushing through life, consumed by work, distracted by trivial concerns, and neglecting the deeper connection with God. I saw myself caught in the daily grind, moving from one task to another without pausing to reflect or reconnect with my spiritual center. I had become so focused on the practicalities of life that I had allowed the more meaningful aspects to fade into the background. "You've been given much, Margaret," Jesus said gently. "Your love for your children, your resilience, your sense of responsibility, all these are gifts. But you've also lost sight of the greater purpose." I felt a deep conviction, not of condemnation but of clarity. It wasn't a harsh judgment, but an awakening. I realized how often I'd allowed busyness to crowd out what truly mattered: faith, love, and eternal purpose. I had forgotten that life wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving in love and devotion to God. "What must I do, Lord?" I asked, my voice trembling with both the weight of my realization and the hope of redemption. "Return and tell them," he said. "Share what you've seen. Live differently. Let your life be a testimony of my love and truth." The next thing I knew, I was back in my body. Pain surged through me, a sharp contrast to the peace I'd just experienced. I could hear the paramedics shouting as they worked to stabilize me. I opened my eyes, blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room. My body felt heavy, broken, but my spirit was alive in a way it had never been before. Recovering from the accident was a long process, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I had to relearn how to walk, navigate the trauma of the crash, and face the questions of skeptics who dismissed my experience as a hallucination. But none of that mattered compared to the mission Jesus had given me. I began sharing my testimony, first with my family, then with my church, and eventually with anyone who would listen. Some people were moved to tears, others scoffed. But I spoke anyway, trusting that the seeds I planted would grow in God's time. My priorities shifted. I spent more time with Jason and Liam, cherishing every moment. I became more intentional about my faith, diving into scripture, prayer, and worship with a hunger I'd never known before. If you're reading this, it's not by chance. There's a reason you found this testimony. Jesus' message isn't just for me, it's for you too. Turn your heart toward Him. Seek truth, love, and purpose. Don't wait for a life-altering moment like mine to wake up to the reality of God's presence. The realms I saw, the lessons I learned, they're real. And they're a reminder that every choice we make in this life echoes into eternity. Let my story be a beacon, not of my experience but of His glory.